And welcome to the World Today Live from studio here at Rage in Accra, Ghana. I am Bright Nanakwesi. I'm in live on DSTV, channel 277, live on Facebook and on YouTube at Metro TV Ghana, on Instagram and on Twitter at Metro TVG. Coming up in the next 60 minutes. South African police on Monday, July 12, fired rubber bullets to disperse looters after days of riots in the wake of former President Jacob Zuma's jailing. We will go live to South Africa for update. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged people on Monday, July 12 to show caution when nearly all remaining COVID-19 restrictions are lifted in England next week, saying an increase in cases underlined that the pandemic was by no means over. And in sports, a mural of England's soccer player Marcus Rashford was defaced with racist graffiti following his team's defeat to Italy in the Euro 2020 final. And thanks for joining us here on The World Today. Let's start with the news from Ghana. As the First Lady of the Republic of Ghana, Her Excellency Rebecca Akufo-Addo, says she can't accept emolument approved for her by Parliament. She thus decided to refund to the state all the monies paid her since 2017, which amounts to 899 million. 97.84 Ghana cedi. This was captured in a statement signed by Koko Blebo, Director of Communications at the Office of the First Lady. Now, the First Lady says, and I quote, "The First Lady, in consultation with the President of the Republic, has decided to refund all the monies paid to her as allowances from the date of the President's assumption of office from January 2017 to date, amounting to 899 million 97.84 Ghana cedi." Now, the First Lady continues to say that she has also decided not to accept any monies that have been allocated to be paid to her pursuant to the recommendations of the Intiamwa Bailey Committee as approved by Parliament. She is doing this as purely personal decision without prejudice to the right of others and not to undermine the property of or propriety of the process undertaken by Parliament. In a statement, Mrs. Akufo-Addo's Director of Communications argued that the First Lady did not request to be paid any allowance and that she only received that which existed and attached to her status, albeit informally. According to the statement, the wife of the President took the decision because the discussion that greeted the announcement of the allowance payment have been laid with some extremely negative opinions, which she finds distasteful, as such commentaries only seek to portray her as a venal, self-seeking and self-centered woman who does not care about the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. And away from Ghana, let's now go to South Africa as police on Monday, July 12, 2021 fired rubber bullets to disperse looters after days of riot in the wake of former President Jacob Zuma's jailing at the Jabulani Mall in Soweto. Looters brazenly walked past TV cameras carrying armfuls of stolen goods. Police said disturbances had intensified and 219 people arrested as the controversial ex-leader challenged his 15-month prison term in the country's top court. Days of riot have left at least 6 people dead. The sporadic pro-Zuma protests that broke out when he handed himself over last week have quickly escalated into looting and arson, mainly in his home province of KwaZulu, Natal, but also in Gauteng, where the biggest city, Johannesburg, is. Opportunistic criminals appear to be taking advantage of the anger some feel over Zuma's incarceration to steal and cause destruction, the police in South Africa stated. So let's now go live to South Africa, where I've been joined by political commentator and broadcaster LUKHONA MNGUNI to tell us more on what exactly is happening in South Africa. Hello, good morning, LUKHONA.
Good morning to you, Bright, and good morning to your viewers.
Great to have you this morning here on Metro TV. So let's start the conversation from what is happening currently. It doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. It started about 2 or 3 days ago after Jacob Zuma actually went in and gave himself into for the 15-man jail term. It has gone down till now. The president has spoken, but it's not stopping. What is happening?
Well, I mean, Bright, there are a lot of things that are happening. South Africa is generally a very vulnerable society. We are the most unequal country in the world, and what we are seeing is an accompaniment of such social realities. A lot of people, in terms of socio-economic terms, are suffering from the pangs of poverty and unemployment. So you always need a responsible political leadership in the country at any given time. You don't need any people who will be sending inflammatory statements that may agitate people into one form of action or the other. Now, people take advantage of these social vulnerabilities for their own political causes from time to time. And I think the looting that we are now seeing in the country has far surpassed the events of the imprisonment of the former president, Jacob Zuma. What we are now seeing, well, on the one hand, you call it opportunistic criminal element. That's true. Where you see people who are part of the haves, people are driving their cars and they're able to go to a shop and, loot whatever, load in their cars and go home. But on the other hand, we always lament the fact that we've got a very highly indebted middle class. So while we might say they are opportunistic criminal elements, it might just be people trying to supplement their livelihood and their, all the things that they would have hoped to earn from their income, but they are unable to. So, Bright, what you have in this country is a very, very difficult situation, which could come, very hard on us as a society if it is not nipped in the bud. Because while we might say a lot of it has been in KwaZulu-Natal, parts of Gauteng, and in some elements of other provinces sporadically, but not in a sustained manner. But if it catches on, it would actually exacerbate itself. I think because there's also a political undertone, and some people are actually resistant to that political undertone of the former president of the African National Congress and don't want to participate in anything that appears to be propping up the current governing party. You get a bit of resistance. And I think that's good, because if it was an organic uprising of the disenfranchised, it would probably be much worse than what we see today.
Let's now talk about what was stated by Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday in his address in connection with the looting. He believes that if the looting should go on, or if the rout should go on, there's going to be shortage in the vaccination. The vaccines for COVID-19 will be short, and even foods will be affected as well. What do you make of this?
Well, of course, there's no doubt about that, because vaccination sites have to close down and they can't operate as some parts of the country are on a total shutdown, or some parts of our cities are under threat that if they do open up, they could see these criminal elements coming to their shores and actually, not only vandalizing, but stealing the vaccine stock and all of that. So now you've got to secure the vaccination stock in the very secure sites, which you may need to recall some of the vaccines you would have probably transported to local areas and local communities. That's one. So that delays materially, in some respects, the vaccination rollout strategy, which, of course, was already not at the requisite standard here in South Africa. The president has been saying that he would love to see us vaccinating over 300,000 people per day. We are performing at about 60% of that currently. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Insofar as food shortage is concerned, I mean, Bright, you raised an interesting one. A friend said yesterday, guys, where are we going to buy bread tomorrow? Because, I mean, in our neighborhoods, in some areas, malls and shops have been looted. So where are people going to get bread tomorrow? It's not because there's going to be a shortage of food supply, but there is an insecurity in delivering food to those shops because now they are not secure, they are vandalized. What does that tell you? People have to be much more cautious, tread carefully, and eventually what you'll end up with is a lot of food probably going off at the point of manufacturing. For example, things such as bread that may have been ready to dispatch to communities and shops. What will happen to that kind of stock going forward? So there's a lot in terms of that aspect, but it might not be a prolonged problem. It really depends how soon all leaders in society, not just from political parties, across the groupings in civil society, religious community, when will all the leaders come up and try and manage the situation and quell the tensions in society and contain the anger of the people? Because, as I said, in a society like ours, where also violence is so prevalent, whether you talk gender-based violence, whether you talk murders, whether you talk assaults, there's a lot of a psyche of violence in South Africa. So you need leaders who are going to contain the anger. I don't think they can eradicate it, but they've got to contain and rechannel that anger.
Lukhona, you just mentioned that there's a lot of assault and rioting and things happen in South Africa almost all the time. Levels of insecurity. But the question I want to find out, I want to ask is, the arrest of Jacob Zuma, did it really warrant this loot and rout?
Well, it was a catalytic effect. It was not necessarily the cause of the problems. You see, as I say, vulnerable societies, or what we call fragile states, they need responsible leadership. So yes, you did have people who support former President Zuma, who called on people to demonstrate their disdain at this act of him being imprisoned at 79 years and all of that for the next 15 months, which he will serve a quarter of it and then be eligible for parole. So some people took advantage of those moments and played into the social vulnerabilities that are there. And we see this all the time. When politicians are in trouble with the law and they are attending court cases, they marshal a number of people to come to these court cases as a show of support and then address them afterwards. It's the egotistic type of politics at play, and it's also wanting to show some bravado that you still have a following, even if you might be in trouble with the law. And it's really an insubordination of the law in a sense, because you then say, my political support trumps the legal outcomes. Yeah. And so some people have been quite keen to see that happening with the former president, to say, irrespective of the legal outcomes that he's confronted with, he still enjoys a lot of support. And by the way, the support that he has can make this country ungovernable. So some people played into those sensibilities. And yes, a catalytic moment, but nonetheless, it has become far bigger than that. There's no doubt about it.
Let's move away from the loot and rout. Let's talk about the legalities involved with Jacob Zuma's jail term and accusations and charges leveled against him. Now, yesterday, my understanding is that the legal team for Jacob Zuma were in court to challenge the term and also some of the allegations leveled against him. What can you tell me about this?
Well, at a fundamental basis, former President Zuma was expected to go and appear before a commission of inquiry that he had established shortly before leaving office. And that is called colloquially a commission of inquiry into state capture. But really, it's an inquiry that is investigating corruption, malfeasance, maladministration, and just a sense where public representatives, especially those in the executive, may have, deferred some of their powers to private interests with the objective of gaining something materially for themselves, their families, and their associates. So broadly, that's what the Commission of Inquiry is about. Now, you've got an instance where former President Zuma goes to the Commission of Inquiry, appears there, and makes a bit of remarks which end up getting him in trouble with other colleagues of his in the African National Congress. He gets sued by someone, and he has to pay 500,000 rands, which is probably now an equivalent of probably about $40,000 US. And he has to pay this money because he said one of his political colleagues was a spy during apartheid. At least he intimated that. So now President Zuma then gets called back into the commission. He arrives and then he makes a challenge that he believes that the chairperson of the commission has an apprehension of bias towards the chairperson of the commission, and therefore the chairperson should recuse himself and then he will testify. Now, the conundrum with that commission is that it's a one-person commission, unlike some commissions where you would see a panel. So there's no panel that hears the evidence. There's one person who's the Deputy Chief Justice of the apex court in South Africa, the Constitutional Court. Now, for his refusal to happen, you have to really mount a serious bet. So the chairperson refuses to recuse himself, and then former President Zuma is agreeing, and then he says he will take this on review. On the other hand, the commission continues to pursue him, trying to compel him to come before it through subpoenas and all of that. And then former President Zuma doesn't, acknowledge, doesn't go through with those subpoenas, and then eventually they take him directly to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court finds that he ought to appear before the commission. He doesn't go, and then he's charged with contempt of court. That's the reason why former President Zuma is.
If you can hear me, I'm going to come back to you later for more on this. We are far behind time, but thank you so much for time that's here on The Word Today. We are grateful. And until we speak again, stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brian. Keep well.
All right, so I have been speaking to South African political commentator and broadcaster LUKHONA, who spoke to us about what is happening in South Africa currently. Let's away from South Africa. Let's now go to Cameroon. There's some beautiful story right there as Boris Kamgo scattered food into the netted enclosures of his fish farm on the palm-fringed the Bamba River in the Littoral region of Cameroon. The surface chance with the red tilapia he hopes will help curb his country's dependence on frozen imports. Spicy grilled fish served whole in one of Cameroon's de facto national dishes, but around half of the sum of 500 tons of fish consumed per year is brought from abroad, while the rest is almost a wild caught. He wants to change this narrative.
Spicy grilled fish served whole is one of Cameroon's de facto national dishes, but around half of some 500 tons of fish consumed per year is bought from the wild, while the rest is almost all wild caught. Kamgo is part of a nascent government-backed aquaculture movement seeking to grab a larger share of the ever-growing market for fish in the nation of over 20 million. The 32-year-old has traveled to China, the Netherlands and Vietnam to learn how to raise red tilapia and pangasius, a so-called shark catfish native to Asia that he realized will thrive in Central African waters. Kamgo says stroking a whiskered pangasius newly fished out of a freshwater pond at the aquaculture complex of his company Agro World Group, which sells 23 tons of fish per month. Market dominance is a distant dream, but fish farming is on the rise across Cameroon, with over 10,000 tons produced in 2020 compared to 5,000 tons in 2018, according to Divine Ngala Tombo, who is the deputy head of aquaculture at the Fisheries Ministry. To support the country's 15,000 fish farmers, the government has introduced import bans or limits on certain species, including red tilapia. As of 2021, it has also removed all custom duties on imports of aquaculture equipment to encourage the sector to scale up further. Kamgo is eager to share his expertise with peers in Cameroon and elsewhere on the continent. He trains his students how to breed fish at his company's laboratory outside the commercial capital, Douala, and sells juvenile fish locally, as well as to farmers in neighboring Gabon and the Democratic Republic of Congo. As the son of a fish farmer, Kamgo says he always followed his father to inspect the pond in the morning when he was a boy, and that's how he came to love the trade.
And so hopefully he gets to change the narrative there in Cameroon. Away from that, now the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha is fast approaching this neighborhood in Pakistan's commercial capital, Karachi. It's time for an annual spectacle.
Every year, plump and polished cattle are lowered from the crane from Saeed Ijaz Ahmed's rooftop farm down into a congested street of Nazimabad neighborhood ahead of the sacrificial festival. This year, the festival takes place for 3 days next week from July 21. An excited crowd just stops to see a white ox weighing more than 500 kilograms hanging by straps as it is carefully lowered from the top of the 4-story building on Sunday. People usually buy sacrificial animals for slaughter a few weeks before Eid, but Ahmed decided to build a barn on his rooftop and raise his own. It has proven to be a much more economical choice for the small business owner, even though he has to hire a crane. He's been doing this for 18 years. This year, Ahmed selected 5 oxen and 1 cow for the festival, which is one of the 2 most important ones in the Islamic calendar. The meat will be shared among family, friends, and also donated to the poor.
Plum cattle at Pakistan's rooftop exactly a week today is Edo Ada. You're still watching the World Today live on Metro TV Live on DSTV channel 277. We are back from the break with more. Welcome back. It's still the World Today live on Metro TV. Let's now go to the UK as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged people on Monday, July 12 to show caution when nearly all remaining COVID-19 restrictions are lifted in England next week, saying an increase in case underlined that the pandemic was no means over.
It's absolutely vital that we proceed now with caution. And I cannot say this powerfully or emphatically enough. This pandemic is not over. This disease, coronavirus, continues to carry risks for you and your family. We cannot simply revert instantly from Monday the 19th of July to life as it was before COVID.
Thank you, Prime Minister. First slide, please.
We're removing the government instruction to work from home where you can, but we don't expect that the whole country will return to their desks as one from Monday. And we're setting out guidance for business for a gradual return to work over the summer. And as a matter of social responsibility, we're urging nightclubs and other venues with large crowds to make use of the NHS COVID pass, which shows proof of vaccination, a recent negative test, or natural immunity as a means of entry. Chris or Patrick want to add to that?
I think that's right, Prime Minister. The important thing is that
we'll keep our tough border policy, including quarantine for those arriving from red list countries, and we will keep the test, trace and isolate system in place. A few weeks, we hope. Patrick? Every week that goes by, we're getting hundreds of thousands more jabs into arms, and our delay to the roadmap that we announced last month has enabled us to get 7 million more jabs in the last 4 weeks alone. Patrick, anything to add before we go to the public? Let's go to questions from the public. Michael from Manchester. Because the legal restrictions have come off, should not be taken as an invitation by everybody simply to have a great jubilee and freedom from any kind of caution or restraint. That's what we're saying. And I think what the scientists are saying is this is the right date, or as good as any other date to do this, but it's got to be taken seriously, and we've got to go as slowly as we can, given the constraints we're under. And I think that, for me, that...
Let's still stay in the UK. I've now been joined on Zoom by forensic psychiatrist consultant Dr. Folashade Olajubu for more on this and also what is happening in Britain amidst COVID-19. Hello, good morning and welcome, Ola.
Good morning, Bright, and good morning to the viewers.
Great to have you on The World Today. Let's go straight into what is happening in Britain. Boris Johnson lifting restrictions on lockdown. What do you make of this?
Well, the health secretary also announced yesterday that the reason why it was felt appropriate to ease the lockdown now was on a number of measures. I think the first thing was they said that they were, easing the lockdown or stopping the lockdown now because of the success of the vaccination rollout, which arguably is one of the most successful in the world. I think the second thing they said was that even though there has been a rise in cases, the reality is at the moment that has not increased the rates of hospitalization and severe disease. And the understanding, I suppose, that from the health secretary's point of view, they always have to forward think to the winter months when traditionally in this country, there's always a rise in hospitalization due to flu. And so from their perspective, at the moment, they feel this is the best time to ease the lockdown.
All right, so others also are saying that them being in lockdown since March last year is against their human right and that they want to go out. These are all reasons why pressure mounting, together with some economic strikes that the UK wants to make and where it's heading to, all amount to what exactly is happening, why the lockdown has been lifted. Now, coming in, you were expected to also go nose mask free. Where is the country heading to?
Well, essentially, uneasy lies ahead. I actually have great sympathy for Boris Johnson because I think it's been a very difficult path to walk in the last, 16 months, because as you would be aware, we went into our first lockdown in March last year. And I think throughout the pandemic, there has been this tightrope of balancing the health of the nation in terms of physical health and mental health in comparison or weighting it against the economy of the nation. My personal view is that at the end of the day, maybe this is not necessarily the best time to lift all of the restrictions. But as you know, Boris Johnson was quite emphatic yesterday that we need to proceed with caution. And there were some guidelines that will remain in place from the 19th, although they will not be statutory law. So the recommendations are that people, where possible, meet in public, even though from that date there will be no restriction on how many people can meet. And the guidance is still that where in an enclosed place one should wear a mask. As you said, there are probably two polar positions in this country. A lot of people talk about their human rights and the fact that it's against their human rights to be restricted in terms of where they can go and how they can live. And they feel that the public health laws that have been in place since March last year are a restriction of their civil rights and their liberty. At the other end, of course, we can't ignore the fact that we're in a pandemic. And I think that most people that you would talk to on the street will be cautious, even though the restrictions are lifted on the 19th. And so, as we said, most people that I speak to, for example, will want to wear masks in a public setting. I know for myself as a doctor that, communications have already been circulated that regardless of the lifting of the restriction on the 19th, we will be expected to use PPE as appropriate and to wear masks and to observe social distancing, which are some of the things which will no longer be legally mandatory from the 19th.
Among some of the regulations stated by Boris Johnson includes the use of the NHS as people step out to make sure that they have access to some places. Let's talk about the general mood in Britain, in the UK, after the announcement by Boris Johnson. How is it like?
The reality is that the pandemic has had an impact on various domains of society, not least mental health. And as you know, I'm a mental health practitioner. Human beings are social beings, and it has been incredibly difficult for most people, if not all people, to either go through extended periods of isolation or shielding. So I think the public mood is that many people are really quite tired of the restrictions. and they just want to go back to normal life. I also wonder whether there's a false sense of safety because a large proportion of the adult population has been vaccinated, as we know. However, even myself listening to the news last night, they interviewed some young people. And of course, the young people say that they are possibly those who will be most at risk now, because in this country, individuals under 18 have not been vaccinated. So I think there is a mixed feeling in the country. Yes, there are many people who welcome increased freedoms and liberty and the ability to live life as they choose. But I think most people are very concerned, especially with regards to the awareness of the Delta variant. And as you know, the Delta variant is 55% more transmissible than the Alpha variant, which is 50% more transmissible than the original Wuhan variant. So I think that really most people are proceeding with caution, but of course there is a slight sense of relief in many parties that at least we can, in inverted commas, go back to normal. However, I want to emphasize that Boris Johnson said that, in reality, we can't go back to life as normal pre-March 2020.
Doctor, I need a very quick answer from you for my next question. So the Euro just ended. My heart goes out to you, those in England. I mean, you lost, yeah, we understand. My heart goes out to you. But then, coming down, now that lockdown restrictions have been lifted, how are we going to ensure that we regulate the spread of the COVID-19 and also the new variant in town, the Delta variant?
And I think that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because the reason why the nation has been in lockdown is because we know that it's highly transmissible. And the best way to stop the transmission are all the measures that have been in place more or less over the last year, which is restricting the numbers of people coming into contact, social distancing, wearing masks. So the reality is that this is a really big gamble. Boris Johnson's argument is that we've had a very successful vaccination rollout. And the thinking behind it is that although the rate of infection will increase because of the vaccination program, the hope is that the rate of hospitalization and severe disease will not rise exponentially.
Thank you so much for time this year on The World Today. We are grateful.
Thank you very much.
All right, and Dr. Folashade Olajubu is a forensic psychiatrist consultant, and she joined us via Zoom all the way from the UK. Let's just stay with COVID-19, but away from UK, let's now go to Australia, where with Sydney's International Airport terminal sitting nearly empty, vaccination rollout continuing at a snail's pace and borders closed, travel-starved Australians and others who work in the tourism industry say they are tired of the restrictions.
But there's an increasing groundswell of dissatisfaction and frustration with not being able to travel, with a complete lack of certainty, and it certainly affects the 30% of Australians that were born overseas, all those Australians who've got extended family overseas and can't visit, can't live a normal life because they can't travel. We're one of only 2 countries in the world where the citizens aren't allowed to leave the country, and the other is North Korea, which is not one I'd want to be held up against. I don't think it's any kind of plan at all. It's not a smart plan. It's not specific, measurable, attainable, relevant or time-bound. So there's no commitments and there's no way that others can support actions to make it a success. We need a tangible plan with definite objectives and agreed outcomes so that we all know what we're working towards.
Well, since we had all the cancellations of the whole cruising industry, and I hadn't done a cruise in ages, and then all of a sudden they started to rebook all the cruises and there were all the deals out and everything. So I kind of got a little bit carried away and I booked 5 cruises, over 2 years. And bit by bit, they've just, all been cancelled, which is really disappointing because I've been so looking forward to getting back to cruise ships and that lifestyle again. Yeah, there's me on the deck looking like Marge Simpson.
Away from Australia now to the US, as President Joe Biden has stated that the Haiti's leaders need to come together after the July 7 assassination of their president, and that the United States stands ready to provide any form of assistance.
Folks, I want to start by recognizing the remarkable protests that are taking place in Cuba, with the Cuban people demanding their freedom from an authoritarian regime. And I don't think we've seen anything like this protest in a long, long time, if quite frankly ever. The United States stands firmly with the people of Cuba as they assert their universal rights. And we call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence or attempts to silence the voice of the people of Cuba. And we're also closely following the developments in Haiti in the wake of the horrific assassination of the president that recently took place. The people of Haiti deserve peace and security, and Haiti's political leaders need to come together for the good of their country. Over the weekend, I dispatched a high-level expert delegation to assess the situation and to determine where the United States can offer our support. And finally, as a close neighbor and friend of the people of both Cuba and Haiti, the United States stands ready to continue to provide assistance, and I'll have more for you as we move on.
Let's just stay with the U.S. as a brutal heat wave punishing the U.S. West pushed temperatures toward all-time records now, with California registering some of the hottest temperatures on the planet in the desert city of Palm Springs.
In the desert city of Palm Springs, where temperatures are set to continue on their upward trend this week, visitors to the tourist hotspot did what they could to cool off from the blistering heat. Local restaurants have installed misters on their outdoor patios in an effort to keep diners cool. Our temperatures early Sunday afternoon written on 113 degrees Fahrenheit, they had little impact.
I don't feel places like this should exist. It's too hot. It's too hot. I'm drinking as much water as I can. I'm drinking my weight in water every day. It's the only way I feel I can not pass out.
I mean, this heat is what I expect from an area like this, so it is an escape from the Los Angeles heat, which is still dry, but this is a special type of dry heat that is oppressive until you get used to it.
We still come to live from our studio here at Accra in Ghana. This is The World Today. We return from the break with more. Welcome back, and still watching The World Today live on Metro TV. Let's now take a look at some business stories around the world. And the African Continental Free Trade Area has established and operationalized a dispute settlement body under the Dispute Settlement Protocols. The AFCFTA dispute settlement body protocol has been carefully negotiated by member states following comprehensive consultations to ensure a full engagement on its implementation.
Developing national strategies to ensure countries can implement the AFCFTA considering the characteristics of their own markets. Developing an AFCFTA Country Business Index, which will monitor and evaluate the implementation of the agreement for business. In addition to business, also mitigating the challenges. like ensuring the gender and youth-sensitive implementation of the AFCFTA, as well as mobilizing financial resources for implementation. The AFCFTA is an African solution for supporting industrial development, creating new business opportunities, generating jobs, and reducing poverty.
And in Europe, stocks fell slightly on Monday as investors saw the economically sensitive sectors and worries that the spread of new coronavirus variants was stalling a global economic recovery.
The stock markets are quiet, but in a good way. Robert Halver, the head of capital markets analysts at the private Baader Bank, said, saying the worries of last week, such as the concerns about interest rates, were gone, but markets were worried about the fallout from coronavirus measures surrounding the Delta variant. The pan-European stock 600 index slipped 0.1% after marginal opening gains. Banking, mining, travel, and auto stocks fell between 0.4 and 1.2%, with investors unwinding bullish bets on the global economy as the Delta virus variant tears through large parts of Asia. Volatility picked up across global markets last week after US and China data raised fears that economic growth may have peaked, driving government bond prices higher and stocks lower. Meanwhile, European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said the central bank will change its stance on the next policy steps at its next meeting to reflect its new strategy and show it is serious about reviving inflation. European Central Bank's new strategy allows it to tolerate inflation higher than its 2% goal, meant to reassure investors that policy won't be tightened prematurely.
The coronavirus affecting all walks of life. Let's now do some lifestyle stories. And French couture house Christian Dior kicked off Paris Fashion Week in a person runway show, drawing celebrities front row in an attempt to revive a touch of pre-pandemic glamour.
Welcome to our new movie. That's with all the shades of Dior right now. Welcome to our new film. How do you feel?
Surreal. This is my first time being back in public, so it's a whole deal. I think everyone's just excited to be back together. I mean, that's why I wore this dress with a big red heart, because I was like, finally I get to be around people. I'm just very happy to be in a room with people and looking at incredible pieces.
By the way, it is more calm because I think people are genuinely, life was so fast-paced. Everyone needed this realization of so many things that was going on in the world, and it obviously took a really bad thing to happen, but it's everyone's, I think it's just been great for everyone to be here. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
We are very emotional all together. It's not only my emotion, but it's also the emotion of the atelier, the studio, because we are not to forget that it's a community work. There are so many people that work at the collection. We was very happy to realize beautiful film, but it was just a little bit impersonal for all the people that work with us, with me, with the company. They really are proud.
Actress Jessica Chastain and Bolissi were all there to experience that particular beautiful runway show there. Let's now still stay with lifestyle, and pent-up frustration over the state of Israeli politics boils over in the rocky back of Beyond in Nadav Lapid's latest movie, a partly biographical tale inspired by his own experience of government meddling at one of his film screenings.
Équipe du film Le Genou d'Aed, à Berer, présenté en compétition officielle. Son réalisateur.
Lapid said on Thursday that he was less interested in politics than inner conflict. However, his characters, consumed by a love-hate relationship with their country, came close to breaking point. In the film, An Israeli movie maker arrives in a dusty desert town for a screening of one of his productions. There, he meets an engaging young culture ministry official who asks him to sign a form listing the discussion topics he wishes to explore, triggering his outage. Lapid's own conflicted sense of identity crept into the movie, he said. The main character displays moments of affection from his homeland, recording a desert sunset on his phone to send to his dying mother, or sharing a joyous car ride with a local to the sound of Bill Withers' Lovely Day.
For me, I don't know to which extent. I mean, I'm less interested in places, in states. I'm more interested in the mark that states leave on the soul of the people who live inside them. There's a beautiful sentence that was said by an expressionist painter. I don't want to paint the car, but I want to paint the impression that the car left in my heart when it passed. So I want to show how people's soul are changed, are tormented sometimes, are perverted sometimes by a state, by a place, by the state of Israel.
I think for Nadav, a special exercise to a special fight.
And I must say that myself, I was shocked by the level of the intimacy that I think that exists on the screen, because writing the script, I told myself I was in a very specific state of mind. I told myself no more ambiguity, no more ambivalence. Let's go this time frontal, be direct, and then
Israeli filmmaker Lapid there explaining what exactly his film means. At exactly 7 a.m. this morning will be on, but that will be after the world today. A quick 10, we'll be back with more. Welcome back. It's to the World Today Live on Metro TV. Let's now do some sports. And in sports this morning, a mural of England soccer player Marcus Rashford was faced with racist graffiti following his team's defeat to Italy in the Euro 2020 final.
Ed Wellard of Withington Walls said he immediately fixed or covered the vandalized parts of the mural when he heard it had been damaged. Wellard said that he felt racism was becoming increasingly prevalent and that the vandalism just compounded the disappointment following the final. 23-year-old Rashford was brought on as a late substitute in Sunday's match, but missed England's third penalty kick after the score ended 1-1 after extra time. Subsequent misses from 21-year-old Jadon Sancho and Bukayo Saka, 19, resulted in a 3-2 loss for England. And all three men experienced a storm of online racist abuse in the hours after the match.
Being daubed with, racist graffiti. And yes, I've come out to fix what I could immediately and cover up what I couldn't. And hopefully we'll get the artist Axe to come back out and fix it. It was really sad. Like, it's a sad morning for us all anyway, isn't it? You know, we dared to dream yesterday and our hopes were dashed, but to wake up to this, it's more depressing, isn't it? Like, that we live in a country where this kind of response is, you know, the new normal now, isn't it? Like, this racism seems to be more and more prevalent, isn't it?
Rashford's public profile has soared during the coronavirus pandemic, in part due to a widely publicized campaign for poor children to be given more support.
Quite sad moment there for blacks around the entire world. Hopefully, this gets to end soon. So at exactly 7 a.m., Nanaya Bwachi Tanwa and Kweju Nyantachi Quarantine will come your way with this morning happenings across Ghana. And as you can see on the screen, and they are ready to give you the latest happenings in Ghana. Nanaya and Kweju, what's happening?
Hello, Bright.
Yes, so what are some of the trends in Ghana lately?
The top news that has been trending since last night has been the First Lady finally rejecting whatever is to come her way. And that's a very, the main story that has been trending since yesterday. Like, there was a statement.
2017.
I know Kojo has a lot to say about this. Kojo, you have been following this, just say issue when it came up. You've been quite interested in it. Finally, she says she's not going to take the money, and returning monies paid to her since 2017. What do you make of this?
Well, I think some way, somehow, she's been bullied into returning all these, monies. And I think if she got it legitimately, I don't understand why she should refund right from 2017 to now. If you're saying you're not going to take the salaries that has been agreed by Parliament, okay, that is fine. But then to refund what you have gotten legally since 2017, well, but
I think bullied to return those monies is such a strong word. Bullied to return the monies paid to her. Okay, we come to you at exactly 7 a.m. for the latest.
Sure, that's fine.
All right, thank you, Kojo and Anaya. You're still watching the World Today live here on Metro TV, and like at 7, don't forget, this morning, happenings in Ghana will be given to you by the door there. Let's still stay here. And a quick one, let's give you what has happened here on the news. Our top stories, take a look at them. South African police on Monday, July 12, fired rubber bullet to disperse looters after days of riots in the wake of former President Jacob Zuma's jailing. We went to South Africa for a live conversation. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged people on Monday, July 12, to show caution when nearly all remaining COVID-19 restrictions are lifted in England next week, saying an increase in cases underlined that the pandemic was nowhere over. And in sports, a mural of England's soccer player Marcus Rashford was defaced with racist graffiti following his team defeat to Italy in the Euro 2020 final. Thanks for watching. It's been 60 minutes of news around the world with me, Bryce, and Akwasi and live from studios here at Region Accra. This is the Queer Bohima Studios. Have a good morning and enjoy the rest of the programs. Bye.